Ebola scare? Is this a false flag? Because it seems like, we're seeing all these things that are saying that, if you get out in the sun, that can cure cancer. We just got these doctors shipped over here from Africa that are now back here with the CDC, and because they got affected over in Africa. But now, I was watching something on Fox News the other day, which says, really an outbreak in the United States of Ebola would probably almost be impossible to do unless it was some sort of false flag. But anyways, guys, it is 9:15 in the PM. We are August 2nd, 2014. And without further ado, we are at the 15 minutes past the hour. So I am going to bring in my good friend, my good friend that I have known for such a long time now. And the funny thing is, I've never met him in person, but I feel like he's my brother, and I love him dearly. Alfred Webre, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you very much, and I'm very, very happy once again to be with you, Donnie. It seems that like we're always dealing with these earth-shattering events that come up, but they really aren't earth-shattering. They're just sort of, we just have to deconstruct them.
Well, they're distractions. That's what they are.
Yeah.
They're distractions, and it's, I was telling everybody on my show a couple of weeks ago, I was talking about the actual word light worker, and we were talking about how the archons play these dual sides. They have the good and they have the bad, so they can feed off of both energies. But if you keep yourself neutral within the collective unconsciousness, these guys can't win. We can kind of head towards this positive timeline that you and I have talked about for many years.
Exactly. Well, actually, it was Heidi Cole, who is a remarkable woman, who is a busker. She's written a book about busking in New York City called The Subway Diaries, and has a YouTube channel. Who a couple of days ago sent me a press release from the New York City Department of Health saying that I think it was yesterday or the day before. In fact, let me just bring it up right here.
Sure, go ahead.
This is the New York City Department of Health, August 1st, 2014. Health Department conducts the largest no-notice emergency response exercise in New York City history, i.e. a drill. Now, what do you and I know, and many of your listeners know, about what goes along with false flags?
Why don't you tell us?
Drills.
That's right. Exactly. Well, it's been that way. It's what was just recently. One of the kids from Sandy Hook was on, I forget which talk show. I want to say it was on Oprah, and he said that during the time of Sandy Hook, that they were practicing a drill.
Yeah. Basically, the way that they carry off false flags is that they do a drill and then suddenly they take it live.
Yes.
And that's true with Sandy Hook. That's true with 9/11. And in fact, we're releasing tonight an interview and article with independent scientist Loren Murray showing that the Malaysia Airlines MH17 flight, when that was shot down over Donetsk in the Ukraine by the Ukrainian forces or by NATO, there was a NATO drill, a massive NATO drill going on in the adjacent area.
Well, and there's other things saying that this MH17 was actually the flight that was shot down was actually, in fact, the missing plane as well. Is this what you've heard as well?
Well, that's one of the theories. We actually did 4 or 5 programs on Malaysia Airlines 370, and now we've done our first one on MH17, and they look like the two bookends of an attempted matrix or Illuminati, sort of a first attempt to do a bunch of stuff, including perhaps trying to trigger, quote, World War III, or a pivot to Asia, or all this kind of strange stuff. But people can go to our series on it. But the best evidence shows that MH370 was actually shot down by the U.S. Navy in Singapore waters. And it was shot down in Singapore waters because Singapore is controlled by British MI5. And so all the secrecy could be controlled there. And then for the next 30 days, they had Inmarsat and the World Control Media play Where's Waldo with the plane. And they just had everybody under mass mind control on the planet. And this new thing just came out on Malaysia Airlines MH17. It's a multi-layered false flag. Of course, we took it quite personally because both of the false flags, through the use of Malaysia Airlines, part of the psyops is that both Loren Murray was a witness before the Kuala Lumpur War Crimes Commission, and I was a judge on the Kuala Lumpur War Crimes Tribunal that found Tony Blair, George W. Bush, Richard B. Cheney, Donald H. Rumsfeld, and their cabinet guilty of the Nuremberg-level war crime for the illegal war in Iraq, and then found Israel guilty of genocide for their war crimes against the Palestinians starting in 1948, for going in and decimating Palestine and turning it in 1 year from a Palestine that was 97% Palestinian and 3% Jewish to another one, to one that was 97% Israeli and 3% Palestinian at the core.
Now, did you read that article recently that they said in the UK, if anybody speaks out against Israel on Facebook, is now losing their jobs because of this?
Yeah, and so you have to look at the fact that the leader of the opposition there, who's the leader of the Labour Party, Ed Miliband, is speaking out in favor of the Palestinians against Israel, and that's very, very positive. So even the White House, is kind of trying to backtrack a bit.
Well, Netanyahu just came out saying if Obama tries to do anything, he's warning the United States to stay out of it.
Right. So, but the point that I was building up to is that these false flags, the reason why they chose Malaysian Airlines is because the tribunal that we were on, including yours truly, found the United States and Israel guilty of war crimes.
Yep.
So we had a direct hand in this one.
Oh, it was funny.
Because as judges, as a judge, I personally had a hand in it. So we've been tracking this thing because we knew instantly when they brought down Malaysian Airlines that they were playing tit for tat because of the judgment that the various verdicts that our court brought down against the United States and against Israel.
Well, we were talking about it. I was talking exactly about this before we had you on the show a couple weeks back. I was talking about, when you were part of the tribunal there and found Tony Blair and George Walker Bush and Rich Cheney and Condoleezza Rice all guilty of war crimes. And I was trying to figure out what, because I'm like, Malaysia, what is this going, what now it completely it puts together.
It comes down to the tribunal.
Yes, it does.
And to the former Prime Minister of Malaysia. He was the Prime Minister of Malaysia for 25 years. Dr. Mahathir bin Mohamad, who is a physician, and he really made Malaysia independent. He founded the oil company there and took it away from the Rothschild Rockefellers. He kicked Soros and all the Rothschild banks out of the country, and he made the Malaysian currency. Soros tried to bring down the Malaysian currency in the 90s, and he beat the city of London and Soros and all the Rothschilds when they tried to trash the Malaysian currency. And then he went on to found this international tribunal that then went on to hold the UK, the US, and Israel, the three principal war-making, aggressive war criminal powers, guilty of war crimes. And so MH370 and MH17 were both, they chose Malaysian Airlines for that reason. And so when that happened, I said, oh my God, they are playing at the global level now with trials that I've been a part of.
Alfred,
and,
let's pick up with that on the. We're going into the bottom of the hour here, guys.
Okay.
You're listening to 32 Degrees of Insanity. My special guest, Alfred Webre. We will come back and we will continue on this very important show. Please stick around. We are going to be here till 11 o'clock tonight. Tonight, we are going to be covering a lot of important things. So make sure you stick around with us right here on 32 Degrees of Insanity with Donnie Gilson and Ben. We'll be right back. But tonight we have Alfred Webre on the show, and I just love it when Alfred and I do a show. If you guys aren't familiar, Alfred Webre and I did a big show back right before 2000. I think it was in May of 2011, where I talked about Nibiru and the draconian agenda, all kinds of different things, the reptilian agenda. We talked about a lot of interesting things. We talked about what happened to me with the St. Paul Police Department and the fascist police department that is there. And Alfred and I have done follow-ups ever since. Alfred and I talked about the so-called alien implants that Andrew Brazago and Alfred believe that are some sort of multi-dimensional things that might be in my system. As well, we talked about the so-called RFID chip that was in my foot, and weirdly enough, Dr. Greer passed away this past year, and we never really got. I wanted Dr. Greer to do the actual surgery, and Dr. Greer and I had met during a conference that was here in Southern California, actually up in Los Angeles, where I met Mr. Jordan Maxwell and Dr. Greer as well. And God rest his soul, Dr. Greer really brought a lot of the so-called alien implant agenda to us. He was the foremost surgeon in regards to that, and we never really got a chance to look at all this stuff. But I look back at it now. Let bygones be bygones. Let's move forward, because the best thing that we can do right now as a humanity is not focus on one another. Is actually focusing on the collective consciousness, the collective unconsciousness, to bring us to make sure that we are heading down this so-called positive timeline. However, we've got a lot of things that need to get settled before that. that. I mean, Alfred and I have talked about the 2020, the clearing. We've talked about the 2025 supposed area where we'll see Herculobus, or the so-called system, coming in. Alfred and I have even done a show where we talked about Zachariah Stitchin as a hoax, and that it would not be correct for us to say that Nibiru is the actual system, and what we have learned in regards to Zachariah Stitchin, that he was a actual psyop for the Pentagon, and he was kind of an inside guy that brought forth this information, the Sumerian texts and all that. But what do we have going on right now, this moment? Are we going through what the Bible has talked about as the coming of the so-called Jesus Christ? Are we talking about World War III? Are we talking the rise of the Antichrist? A lot of things are happening, but could this be happening in different timelines? Could this be happening within the whole world? We don't know right now, but we're going to kind of touch upon these things. But the one thing that we've been talking about is this mysterious thing that happened over the Ukraine, where, and this is what really kind of blows me away. We've talked about 9/11 as an inside job, where Alfred Webre has found the Tony Blair, George Walker Bush, Dick Cheney, Condoleezza Rice, all the players in regards to 9/11. And we see this plane that goes over Pennsylvania, crashes into Pennsylvania, but yet there is no wreckage whatsoever. This thing kind of disappeared, and there, all we see is a big blank hole. However, now we see this so-called MH17 Malaysian airline get shot down over the Ukraine, and what is there? There's bodies all over the place. There's, just wreckage for the eye to see, planes, wings from the plane 2 miles away here and there. But yet, the particular plane that was supposed to be taken over by box cutter terrorists goes down in a field outside of Pennsylvania, and we see nothing. Zero zip. What say you on that, Alfred? What say you on that? Are we that dumb?
Well, i.e., we're being subjected to a whole series of false flags, and false flags have been the modus operandi that the matrix powers have used on us, not starting with, but most recently with the assassination of U.S. President John F. Kennedy on November 22nd, 1963, which was a coup d'etat, and by the highest levels of the military and financial and political actors in the U.S. and in the world, going up to 9/11, going up to Hurricane Katrina, the U.S. Now, which brings us up to tonight's topic, which is the Ebola.
Yes.
And what I'd like to do is just take a moment and put on the table the different cards so people begin to understand how a pandemic false flag can be done, because it was done in 1919 and 50 million people died worldwide, and the same methodology could be used now. Let's start out. I'm going to start out just reading the very words of the press release of the New York City Health Department dated August 1st, 2014. Mark you, today's Saturday, August 2nd. So this is as we're speaking. Okay. It starts out, today the health department is conducting the largest no notice emergency response exercise in New York City history that will test our ability to respond to the release of a biological agent called RAMPEX, which stands for Rapid Activation for Mass Prophylaxis Exercise. The exercise involves notifying and deploying over 1,500 staff from more than a dozen city agencies and setting up 30 temporary locations that will be used, and this is the key phrase, to rapidly dispense life-saving medication in the event of an emergency. to rapidly dispense life-saving medication in the event of an emergency. Instead of life-saving medication, read vaccines, okay? Read Ebola vaccines. The New York City Health Department is responsible for developing and executing plans for the mass dispensing of life-saving medicine in response to public health emergency. This exercise demonstrates our commitment to ensuring that we have the capability and resources to protect the health and safety of New Yorkers in times of crisis. Now, you put that together with the FEMA regulations and the presidential executive orders that Barack Obama has signed, where if you don't take the vaccines, you can be shot on the spot or you can be quarantined in a FEMA camp. Okay? Hello?
I'm listening to you.
Okay. So that's the setup. Now, that's card number one.
Mm-hmm.
Now, let me go over here to card number two so that people can begin to realize the scale of what's going on. Okay?
Got it.
This is from a study. In 1918, it was not the Spanish flu that killed 20 to 50 million people. It was the cabal, first with vaccines and then with aspirin. And there's all sorts of links on that. I posted them on Facebook in our Facebook group. We have a Facebook group called Alfred Webre. On my profile, people can go to Alfred Webre and see it. And we are going to be posting these online in our news website called ecologynews.com. We'll be posting these updates so you can go and see ecologynews.com. But the basic methodology is the flu didn't kill the people. The vaccines and the aspirin did. That's what killed the 50 million people.
So, and aren't they talking? They're talking about, if I remember correctly, they're talking about actually creating a vaccine for this that they want to distribute come here in September. Is that correct?
Yeah. In fact, they don't have, quote, end of quote, oh, we haven't developed a vaccine for Ebola yet. Oops. Yeah. Okay. So now, let me take a detour, okay? And just, if you can, just maintain the two cards that we've laid down on the table. First of all, the drill that happened yesterday, in which the Department of Health said that this drill was to rapidly dispense life-saving medication in the event of of an emergency, right?
Right.
And if you don't, and they have regulations backed up by presidential executive orders now, that if you're in line and you refuse, they have soldiers there with guns who can shoot you on the spot. Or they can put you in a FEMA camp and isolate you. Okay? Number one. And number two, the fact that, and we'll be posting all the links here, in 1918, it was not the flu that killed 20 to 50 million people. It was the cabal, first with vaccines and then with aspirin. So just keep that in your minds. Now, I'm going to take a little walk through history around the last, not the last, because they certainly tried with SARS, but something that we're all familiar with, and that's the AIDS virus.
Yes.
We now know, as people have suspected, and there's a lot of literature this on the internet. Just Google it. The AIDS virus is a bioweapon that was developed at Fort Detrick, Maryland by the U.S. Army as a bioweapon. It was first field tested by U.S. Army Rangers who took it to Africa, where it was shielded inside. It was embedded inside a smallpox vaccine.
Really?
Yeah, this is how AIDS came to Africa, that has decimated Africa
Interesting.
for the last 40 years. Interesting, it's a war crime.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. The United States military, at least myself, I was given not only smallpox vaccine, but I was given anthrax vaccine as well. I'm wondering if they have also, because as we know, I have an autoimmune disease problem.
Well, that could have come from there, but this was a bioweapon attack by the United States Army on the people of Africa. And they went to South Africa. They went to different parts of Africa on a humanitarian mission. The United States Army. Listen to the war crimes. This is horrific. Mm-hmm. Embedded inside these smallpox vaccines, Army Rangers had the AIDS virus. And they infected the population. Women, children. And that's how Africa has gotten AIDS.
I am.
Which all of Africa is dying from now. Mm-hmm. Which is now embedded in all of their, there are men out there. There's the meme out there that if a man who has AIDS has sex with a young girl, they'll get rid of the AIDS. For decades, all the presidents of South Africa, would not allow any steps to be taken against AIDS because he didn't think that AIDS was serious. I think that they were part of the CIA depopulation program. Mm-hmm. This is horrific what the United States has done as an agent of, the darkest forces on the planet. The monarchy, the world Zionists that are in the service of the Draco reptilians, of the Satanists, of the Orion Greys, of the darkest forces in our universe, dimensional forces. That's what's happened to Africa. Now, what's more is this, and tomorrow we have our Gay Pride Parade here in Vancouver, and it's a huge event. And we were just watching on PBS television. We get the Seattle PBS television, and the British actor Stephen Fry, who's openly gay, has done a series in which he travels all over the world and he confronts homophobia. He even went to St. Petersburg, Russia, to the office of the legislator there that introduced the law that made it illegal in St. Petersburg to make what they call gay propaganda, which, what is gay propaganda? Which then Putin adopted and made it nationwide, right? And so and Fry is tremendous because he sat down in front of this guy and Fry said, "What basis do you have for making this?" And this politician said, "Well, an evil angel fell down from heaven and came to earth, So it's all this fundamentalist crap. You follow me?
I am, yes.
Yeah. And he went to Brazil, to Sao Paulo, where even now gays are being murdered. There was a young boy who a bunch of skinheads thought that he, quote, looked gay, so they beat him up and then they killed him.
Hmm.
And that was an incident which really mobilized all of Brazil. And there were 4 million people at last year's Gay Pride Parade. I mean, you don't have to be gay to march in the Gay Pride Parade.
Isn't there a law, and I forget which area of Africa, but if you are found out to be gay, you are subject to the death penalty.
That's in Uganda. And
Uganda.
And Stephen Fry went to Uganda and he confronted the legislators that put that in. And the guy is totally brave and over the top. If you can see that series, it's on PBS. It's enormous. I'm building up to it.
Okay.
And so that what happened then? This, at the same time that they deployed the U.S. Army Rangers on their humanitarian mission with the smallpox vaccine in which the AIDS virus was embedded and thereby gave AIDS to the African continent, which they've now had for 40 years, giving untold suffering. Through the New York City Medical Examiner's Office, they began a series of experiments on gay people in New York that were misleading. And they went to bathhouses and all of that, and they infected the gay people in New York through the medical examiner under the guise of the Department of Health. This is the U.S. intelligence agencies using the U.S. Army. You know, it's the U.S. Army intelligence. All your tax dollars. Aren't they nice guys? Those genociders. That's what they did. And that's how the AIDS epidemic got started in the United States. It's biowarfare by the U.S. government against the people. And that's why we've had the AIDS. And you remember the AIDS quilts? I remember.
I remember those.
I lived in Manhattan at that time. Everybody was dying.
Yep. Well, that was the time when Rock Hudson came out, and everybody was. There was a huge pandemic.
Oh yeah, 3 of my brothers are openly gay. So it's like, this is like open warfare, right? By the government, but genocidal. Not only against people in one's own country, but against the world. So that is biowarfare. And that's what the U.S. Army and the CIA, prompted by the black monarchies, the UK monarchy, Queen Elizabeth and her consort, Prince Philip, who are the biggest, eugenicists in the world, the world Zionists in the city of London, led by the Rothschilds and the 13 bloodline families, the Dutch monarchy, where they even had to kill their own prince, assassinate him, because, and this all came out through the International Common Law Court of Justice in Brussels, led by Kevin Annett. They now have testimony that the Dutch prince, they have organized where they get young kids, teenagers, both men and women, they strip them naked, they bring them out to the woods, and then they hunt them down and kill them for sport.
The rich, the monarchs.
Yeah, that's what they do.
Surprisingly enough, there was a movie that's out right now called The Purge. Have you heard about this movie, Alfred?
I've heard about it. I haven't seen it.
They do something very similar to what you were just describing. Is these so-called rich elites actually bring in, they kidnap these people during the time of the purge. It takes place one day a week, one day a year, and that they literally hunt them down as sport to, purge themselves of their wrongdoings, their sins.
Right. And so I guess that since it all comes out in the movies, that's probably a psyop strategy where they leak a little bit of it, and then everybody says, you saw that in the movie. It's not
Movies.
True. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what they do. Hollywood is the most notorious of doing these type of, I almost feel that they're almost ritualistic in a way, because they allow viewers to participate in that ritual.
Now,
and how does that work on the collective consciousness?
Yeah. Now, a colleague of mine from Spain has written a book on Hollywood, and you pretty much don't get anywhere unless you participate in satanic rituals.
Well, in the music business and everything.
Right, exactly. So now, I can see that we're coming up to the end of the hour. Do you take a break?
Yeah, we're going to take a break here in about 1 minute, so we got a little bit of time to kind of discuss what we're going to go into second hour.
Okay. I'll say it real briefly. This is the third card. I am looking here, and we'll go in it in depth. This is the third card. I'm looking at the patent that the U.S. government owns, dated 2010, on, quote, the human Ebola virus, species and compositions and methods thereof.
They
own it. They own it.
They own the Ebola. Yes, I saw that patent earlier today. We'll be right back, guys. This is 32 Degrees of Insanity with my special guest, Alfred Webre. And, of course, we'll bring Ben back on, my co-host. But stay tuned. This next hour is going to be one of the most important hours that you're going to know and get to know about this Ebola virus and what is going on in the United States and throughout the world with Alfred Webre. Please stick around. You guys are listening to 32 Degrees of Insanity. Is 9/56/8/2014. We'll be right back with a little bit of station break right at about 2 minutes after the hour. So please stick around. We'll be right back. It never surprises me when Alfred comes on. And Alfred really was, last hour, Alfred is videotaping this for his actualpolitics.tv on YouTube. And, man, I saw Alfred's face just like literally get, this is very passionate for Alfred. And this is ridiculous. War crimes against humanity. We can't, this is something that, positive timeline or not, we are witnessing genocide. We are. And it really just, it bothers me to my soul. And right before we went into break, we started talking about how the United States has a patent. How do you have a patent on a disease? What say you, Alfred Webre? Bring me back on. I want to talk about this. This is ridiculous that we are creating. The CDC is creating viruses like the Ebola virus that can kill and take away this population with a moment dime. I saw something the other day. It was just a game. It's called Virus or something. But this kid was basically started a virus and he watched it mutate throughout the world. And the last particular place to get infected, where the whole world was pretty much gone, but the last place to get infected, and it took a lot to get infected, was Greenland because of how cold it is there. Now, are we going to see a mass pandemic, Alfred? What's going on here?
Well, yeah. So what we're trying to do in this show tonight, as you said, is to really inform people as to the various cards that these parties are trying to play, and as to the methodologies that they're attempting to use. And we showed the methodology that they used in 1918, which is that you make the disease, you blame this flu, but you load the stuff into the vaccine.
Yep.
And that's what they did in Africa. They went with the smallpox vaccine and they loaded the AIDS virus into that. And then the medical examiner in New York loaded the AIDS virus into these medical experiments in the gay community. So it's always this Trojan horse, because it's bioweapons. So now they're coming to the end game. The end game, as we know from the Georgia Guidestones, is to get the world's population down to about 500 million.
million. Yep.
Yeah, so it's basically like that. You've got the Queen, the royal family, the UK Queen. You've got the Dutch crown. You've got the black nobility of Europe. They call them the black nobility because they worship Satan. You've got the entire satanic structure of the planet. Most anybody who's into power structures, either at the corporate level, the media level, at the government level, has got to be a Satanist, or they're in deep denial about it. But essentially, they're all walking around showing the Satan sign, right? You've seen pictures of that.
Of course, yeah. Just recently, Barack Obama was down here at Irvine doing the commencement address, and here he is at the end, showing these, people are saying, oh no, that was the anteater sign because the mascot is anteater. Well, I find it kind of funny that out of all the colleges in the world that he could do a commencement speech, he finds a particular college that is very close to the satanic sign, and you see him and the rest of everybody just flaunting it right in front of us.
Yeah. So it's just, the world is in denial, and it's like chemtrails. You should have millions of people look up, and they don't see anything, or they go into denial. And those are the nanoparticles that are turning you into robots. Are going to kill you, but they've made the Earth into a great gas chamber, but people are like sheeple. They're behaving in a certain program way. So let's begin to examine the methodology here, and let's deconstruct their attempted Ebola false flag. First of all, we know from 1918 that they had to make the Spanish flu the enemy, even though the vaccine was the enemy and the aspirin was the enemy. And we'll put up all those links up on ecologynews.com so you can all get them. And so here, the Ebola virus is the enemy, right? And yet, and we'll put all the links up, there are cures to the Ebola virus. We have Dr. Rita LeBeau, and it's in a simple 2-minute video that we'll put up. Nanosilver completely neutralizes it, and nanosilver is completely cheap, non-toxic. It's available to everyone. It can be used for the entire planet and completely wipe out and neutralize Ebola forever. Okay? It's like, it makes it a non-issue.
A non-issue, yeah.
Yeah. And so that's there. But of course, if you have a false flag going, well, that's going to be buried someplace, right? But I mean, the fact of nanosilver, but that's available. Secondly, there's an alternative which is called ultraviolet germicidal irradiation. So that's available also. And so those are there. Now, let's go to the elements of the false flag, and they involve disinformation. So I'm looking at some of the analysis. They say, right now, the CDC, Centers for Disease Control in Atlanta, they're the major disinformationalist, along with the WHO, the World Health Organization, in creating this false flag. Right now, the WHO says that Ebola is 90% fatal and impossible to cure. That is a complete lie. That's the hope that CDC, WHO, and the creators of this false flag who are trying to depopulate want the public to think. They want the public to think that we're facing annihilation, but which isn't true.
Right.
And and so that we would think that, so that the U.S. population would think that it's doomed because Ebola is going to spread across the country and be out of control. For example, in Germany, one of the main newspapers there, Bild, is now claiming that American Ebola victim Patrick Sawyer, one of the people, may have infected 30,000 people already, meaning that he's already infected 30,000, and then those 30,000 are going to infect others. So that's going to start the pandemic. So that's
Sure.
disinformation. And the Daily Mail, which is a UK newspaper, has quoted Derek Gatherer, a virologist at Lancaster University, saying that Ebola is as infectious as flu and could start a global pandemic.
Well, that's untrue.
Yeah, exactly. So also, those of us, and I'm sure you have seen the statistics also, is that if you begin to look at the mysterious deaths over the past decade, among the highest ranking mysterious deaths are virologists, scientists who are experts on germ warfare.
Well,
and who don't work for the government.
Wasn't the disappearing plane, the Malaysian disappearing plane, they were heading to an AIDS conference, weren't they correct? Was that?
Yeah. So, and maybe that itself was a psyops, to kind of like signal that as
Right. Yeah.
It's like these people are monstrous. So that's the condition we're in. Think about when you go back to the assassination of John F. Kennedy, the first of the major false flags of the last century says, Lee Harvey Oswald acted alone, where, you had George H.W. Bush was coordinating the rifle teams in just one of the buildings. You know what I mean? It was a major operation.
And clearly his picture is right there on the footsteps of
Exactly. And the Secret Service was totally infiltrated and totally part of it. It was just like a complete government job. 9/11, everybody from the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the NSA, the CIA, every alphabet agency was operational in 9/11. And we know from time travel and from our colleague Andrew D. Basiago's whistleblowing, which I, as a judge on the 9/11 War Crimes Tribunal, am in receipt of his sworn affidavit that in 1971, the CIA and DARPA had time-traveled moving images of 9/11, of what happened at the World Trade Center. So that's when Donald Rumsfeld was the defense liaison to the time travel project, and he was a member of the cabinet of Richard Nixon, whose national security advisor was Henry Kissinger, who is the advisor to the Rothschilds.
Oh yeah.
So there,
monster there.
Yeah. So there you have 1971 to 2001 is 30 years. You have 30 years of forward planning of 9/11 as an inside job. It's all documented. It's all there. So this is how now we know how. We're just laying bare right here on this show right now how the Ebola false flag is getting started, right? So we just showed how they're creating the Daily Mail, the Bill, the CDC is creating all these lies. Now, let's go to a second item. There's presidential orders that if you're in line for vaccines and you balk or, some other thing happens, they can order you to a FEMA camp, or they can shoot you on the spot if you're,
Let me ask you one quick question, Alfred,
Yeah.
in regards to this. Okay, we've been having this huge immigration problem that, Obama bringing over.
I brought that up today.
These children,
Oh,
could
yeah.
could they be vaccinating these people and then sending them out into the population, and that's how we might be getting infected? Because if they come in, they want to stay, they got to get it, they got to get vaccinated.
There you have 50,000 vectors.
Yeah, right there.
Yeah. By the way, I should tell you, and I should tell your listening audience, that I have a certificate from the Harvard School of Public Health.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm a little bit conversant in the area of public health.
Sure.
So I'm not like totally talking off the top of my head. And you've got 50,000 vectors today. Vectors, isn't it coincidental that all of a sudden you have the CIA creating and pushing, all the intelligence agencies creating and pushing a wave of 50,000 illegals coming in, the intelligence agencies pulling back all of the immigration, the President of the United States, who is nothing but a lackey to the black nobility, and the world Zionists just trashing the U.S. borders and trashing any notion of what it is to be an American, right?
Correct.
And they are 50,000 vectors. They're like 50,000 infected vectors that are going to run around, and they can be blamed. They're the patsies, right?
They're the patsies. Yep.
They're the Lee Harvey Oswalds. Now, so very good. I'm glad that you brought that up, because it's pure.
And here's the thing. We've got more than half of them which are children.
Yeah.
So what a great way to get it going is hit them at the young age, get them all infected, genocide with the kill. Then we can't have anybody reborn. There can't be. It's almost an extinction of the human race.
Now, in case you were thinking you're going to get away with it, Barack Obama, Barry Soetoro, who's a very dark entity, by the way. I mean, people who don't think that Barack Obama's dark and who still enmeshed in the propaganda are just swallowing poison.
But he was born in Hawaii, Kenya, that is.
No. People can go online and look at our PowerPoint on the making of a Manchurian Candidate, which more than 75,000 people have seen. And he was most likely born in the state of Washington.
State of Washington?
Yeah. There's some chance that he was born in British Columbia, but probably in the state of Washington.
Interesting. And this is new information. I have not heard this one.
Well, I'd be glad to come on a show.
And we could talk. We could talk exclusively on
that. Yeah, sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So now, the regulations which Barack Obama has signed are draconian, where you suddenly lose all rights with a declaration of a health emergency. And not only that, let me read this, so that all of a sudden you're in line and the New York City Health Commissioner says, we're overwhelmed. We're going to have to transport everybody in New York to FEMA camps, okay? Because we're overwhelmed. We just can't do it. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to quote, Guillotines have been installed in boxcars intended for transport to FEMA camps.
Hmm.
The article refers to them as UN boxcars. According to the Obamacare above article, it was the Department of Homeland Security that sent out the execution coding to the states. So DHS put in execution coding of guillotines inside Obamacare. So this is all going to be done as part of Obamacare. You're going to be executed because you have been determined to be like Ebola, and there's no cure, so they're going to have to guillotine you. And Christopher Story wrote about this in his book 20 years ago, which is called The New Underworld World Order, which, if you want to, you can just go to exopolitics.com. It's a 700-page book. I highly recommend it, and download it for free. And he had it there. He said, you guys are just sitting ducks. Now, as beyond grotesque, I just really want to read this so people start getting this stuff, because Americans are living in a fairy tale. As beyond grotesque as it is for the U.S. government to be ordering thousands of guillotines to be used on the American people, the medical coding in Obamacare, if one looks at it at all closely, has a lot more horrific means of murder. All of them listed as, quote, legal execution by the World Health Authority, making it the Mengele of health organizations, meaning that if they say that you have Ebola and there's no cure, they're just going to off you and burn your body.
That's some scary thought. We'll be right back, guys and gals. On that note, 32 Degrees of Insanity, right here on the Truth Frequency Radio Network. My special guest tonight, Alfred Webre. Guys, this is some important stuff. You know, I mean, could this actually happen right here in the United States? Could guillotines be used against the United States citizens in regards to a Ebola outbreak? You know, I've got a question in regards to the guillotines and why they want to sever the heads of people. And I think there is a reason behind that spiritually. We'll be right back on 32 Degrees of Insanity right here on the Truth Frequency Radio Network. Now we have a big scare here with Ebola. I'm going to bring Alfred Webre back onto the show, and we'll have about another half hour to talk about this. Alfred, this is some scary stuff.
Yeah, you know, and just to add some more data, we now have, and we'll be putting these links up on ecologynews.com as well. The U.S. military is now prepping for an Ebola attack or an Ebola pandemic, and is distributing Ebola detection units to all the military in all 50 states. Now, why would that be? Why would that be? Why would that be? I mean, you know, this has the flavor of a combined, coordinated military false flag operation. On a certain date, you flood the border. On other dates, you know, you have the CDC put out false information. On another dates, you make sure that the U.S. Army has kits in all 50 states. Then, you know, you make sure that your lab, which your Ebola lab in Africa, which is funded by George Soros, who is a front for the Rothschilds and the genocidal satanic uh, um, bloodline 13 bloodline families who are named in the book of Revelation as, quote, the synagogue of Satan, and the black nobility of Europe, who in 1952 founded the Bilderberger Group, and their first act, and this is all propaganda, their first act in 1953 was to found, quote, the Club of Rome to deal with population programs.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's say, our plan is to depopulate the world by 90%. So our first PR thing in 1953 is, we're going to found the Club of Rome to, quote, deal with population programs. This is how the Satanists have dealt with, like, the world population, kind of lull them to sleep. We might as well all wake up. The International Common Law Court of Justice has just issued verdicts. It's now found with full legal process, due process, with multiple witnesses and evidence, that in what a billion people think is the bastion of holiness, is God's manifestation on the planet, that all the popes, in fact, all the popes, when they become pope, they have to join what's called the Ninth Circle, which means that they have to go through a satanic ritual in which they kill newly born infants, drink the infant's blood, eat the infant's flesh, and kill the infant, and that's how they take on that power, and that's what gives them the power to be able to ride around in the Pope mobile in their hat and their thing, and have a billion people worship them and their shtick.
Let me ask you one question here, Alfred, and I correct me if I'm wrong. And I've heard something. We were talking about the guillotines, and basically putting these people under the guillotine. Now we're seeing, the extremist Muslims, they cut the heads off of people. We're seeing the guillotine used more and more now. I have heard that if the head is chopped off, basically that traps the soul. Is that something you've heard as well?
Well, certainly what you have coming out of the crown chakra on the top of the head is a silver cord, which goes non-locally and is based in, basically it goes to the interdimensional portals in our solar system, through our galaxy, to the interdimensional portals of our universe, and that's one of your deep connections with
the source,
to a source. Whether or not it can trap your soul, I think, is highly doubtful. I haven't seen any solid replicable data on that, and in conjunction with a newly published book that I have called The Dimensional Ecology of the Omniverse, in which basically what we did is to go beyond string theory, which only goes up to the multiverse, which is a collection of all the universes of time, space, energy, and matter. And we said, there is solid science and replicable evidence gathered according to the scientific method, for the existence of dimensions which are beyond the multiverse, namely the intelligent civilizations of souls in the interlife dimensions, and spiritual beings and source in the spiritual dimensions, and this data is as sound as any data that physicists have for the atomic structure.
Hmm.
So, and that makes up the omniverse. Basically, the formula for the omniverse is the all the universes in the multiverse plus the souls and the spiritual entities and source in the spiritual dimensions equals the omniverse. We go beyond the multiverse.
Hmm.
So that's a new discovery that we've made. I haven't come across a case that would show that the soul is trapped in this dimension because of the head. Now, maybe that's the intention. Uh, Back
Or
in the
maybe
days,
that's the thought that they have. They think that
yeah,
that's happening.
yeah.
Sure.
Going back to the Spanish Inquisition times, what the Spanish used to do then is that when they had an enemy that they really wanted to screw up,
Hmm.
they would get a beautiful woman for the enemy, and when the enemy was in bed with the woman, they would kill him because, according to their Catholic minds, he would die in a state of mortal sin and go to hell.
Right.
So not only would they kill him, but he would go to hell. And of course, from a scientific parapsychological point of view, that's nonsense. And so, but certainly it's a very traumatic death. And that trauma and that fear is what the lower fourth dimensional Draco reptilians that the Illuminati and their minions work for, that's their kind of gravy. So I think
Their
that,
food.
yeah, I think that's what it's about. It's getting that extra fear factor.
Sure, yeah, and which would and I've always, one of the things that I believe when it comes to death is, we've talked about this light that people are supposed to go to. I think that is kind of maybe even a trick of some sort, because I would think that you would have to go through the darkness. I mean, even Jesus Christ went through 3 days of darkness just to get to heaven. And I'm thinking that is something that, even you to listen to and read the Egyptian Book of the Dead or the Tibetan Book of the Dead, you have to walk through this darkness to get to where you're going.
Yeah. Still, it's a fairly straightforward process,
Mm-hmm.
because if you look at the process of reincarnation, the essential technology that's used in reincarnation is teleportation,
Teleportation, yeah.
which the U.S. has achieved now, has had for 40 years. Basically, assuming that the birth is normal, once all the planning and has been done in the interlife, a soul that is preparing to wear one of his aspects, because the soul can maintain a number of incarnations in different dimensions and as different sorts of beings at once. That aspect of the soul, say, that would be incarnating as a human, say on Earth,
Mm-hmm.
they would teleport through an interdimensional portal between the interlife and our time-space hologram, our Earth time-space hologram, to the time-space coordinates right next to the womb of the mother,
Mm-hmm.
and kind of be there for about 3 months, get very close to the fetus, and then at one point enmesh itself into the fetus. And then at the moment of death, assuming that it's a normal death,
Yeah.
the soul essentially teleports back out through the interdimensional portal into the interlife, and that portal, can be depicted as, quote, a light. So
Sure.
yeah, so it's the physics behind it is fairly simple.
I just, I said this on my show before, and I know that there's all of this negativity going around, and there is, we've got these psychological operations, we've got all these things happening. We definitely know that the elites want to get rid of every single one of us. Now we don't matter to them, but can we say anything positive that these guys are not going to be able to go through with the plans that they think they're going to get? Is there
Yes,
any way we can
yes,
win?
yes, yes. No, we are no. I mean, these plans are not going to happen. And one of the principal reasons that they're not going to happen is that, starting with, some people say, October 28th, 2011, other people say the end of 2012, the interdimensional portal at the core of our universe began to broadcast, which we can call the voice of God, or whatever you want to call it, began to broadcast waves of unity consciousness. Now, the difference between duality consciousness and unity consciousness is that duality consciousness is I win, you lose. And
Right.
that's what the last cycle, say from 11,500 years ago or more, or maybe the entire last cycle of 26,000 years has been about dual. No, I would say 11,000 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
when we moved from the golden age into a dark age, and we're sort of coming out of that
Out of
now.
that.
We have been in duality consciousness, which is I win, you lose. And that's what the Matrix thrives on. I win, you lose. That's how they operate. But now all of a sudden, the field has changed to unity consciousness, which is we are one. So none of their enterprises can get off the ground. Look, Malaysian Airlines MH370 false flag was a failure. We blew it out of the water on the first day by showing that the U.S. Navy shot down MH370 over Singapore on the first day, and then had the press cover it up, and then played "Where's the Plane" for 30 days, but it didn't do anything. Yeah, and then MH17 was such a failure that today the White House leaked that, oh yeah, it was the Ukrainians that shot it down. It wasn't the Russians. Because it's over. They can't get it going. They can't get it started. Israel invaded Palestine originally under the tetra lunar eclipses of 1947 to 1948. We now have the tetra lunar eclipses, the 4 lunar eclipses of 2014 to 2015.
15, correct. We got 3 more to go, right?
Yeah. This whole false flag of Israel and Palestine. By the way, Israel founded Hamas. That's what nobody says. That's the truth. Israel founded Hamas so that they would have a push me, pull you that automatically lobs these safe rockets into Israel on command, so that then Israel can come in and whomp Gaza, all at once. And meanwhile, what Israel wants is they want the gas reserves and the mineral reserves off of Gaza.
Of Gaza, yeah.
And they want to kill that. And they just want to take it over. So they created Hamas as a phony enemy. And
kind of like ISIS.
yeah, it's a totally phony enemy. So then, and the world press and the world leadership structure are all Satanists. So they go along with
go
the
right
game.
or go along right with it. Exactly.
Yeah. So it's up to us in the alternative media. It's up to us as citizens to be smart, to wake up, to be conscious, to pay attention, to get off our butts, to be active, to help others awaken. If people don't understand that the price of not awakening is to get 90% Ebola, and if we haven't shown that tonight, I don't know what else we can show.
We can do. Yeah. I 100% agree with you.
Yeah.
Alfred, I want to thank you so much for joining me on the show tonight. It's always a pleasure to have you. I mean, we go back, you and I go back so much.
Right.
And it's just so wonderful to catch up with you and your passions, because, you know, I still am an advocate that we are heading down this positive timeline, and that these are just bumps in the road that we just need to get others to awake, to understand that, you know, this is their game. They play it this way. They sometimes play unfair and they play dirty, but we can overcome, and the collective unconsciousness, or even the collective consciousness, can really start pushing for a better tomorrow. And I hope that our kids and our children's kids will have a much better future. But we're laying the seed work right now. You, me, all of us out there in the alternative media, we'll be here until the day we die, and hopefully that what we have planted, the seeds that we have planted, will push us forward into a better tomorrow. What do you think, Alfred?
I think that is right, you know, and we have actually eaten through a whole number of monsters. We ate through the false Planet X, and now we're eating through the false Ebola martial law false flag hoax. So hopefully, you know, as these guys come down the road, we'll get up there, we'll deconstruct them. Not to say that they aren't, you know, serious attempts, but at least we can take them apart. We can show what they are. We can show that it's false, that there are cures, and we can show that they're just trying to get you to internalize their poison.
Now, you did videotape this tonight, so this will be broadcasted back on Exopolitics TV. Is that correct?
Yeah. This will be up in, you know, probably a few days.
A couple days, yeah.
And so people can, and the reason why we did this, and actually you and I talked about it prior to the show, is because almost as a public health bulletin. Yeah, so that people can see what's really going on, and we'll have an accompanying article with it that'll refer to some of the evidence and the various things that we talked about tonight.
Well, fantastic, Alfred. It's always a pleasure to have you on the show. Why don't you tell everybody how they can find you? There's some new listeners that we have tonight, I'm sure, that have not heard about you. Why don't you just kind of give them a brief idea of how to listen into your other work, and also a little bit about Exopolitics, then we'll call it a night.
Sure. People can go to our main website, which is exopolitics.com. And that's basically a portal out into the universe and the multiverse and the omniverse. And we also have a website, ecologynews.com, where we look at specific issues, specific false flags, like the Ebola martial law false flag hoax that we talked about tonight. And we've taken apart a lot of false flags there. And also you can reach us on Facebook at Alfred Webre.
Outstanding. And everybody can also come to, we'll be putting this up on www.32degreesofinsanity with Alfred's contact information, everything to find him online, or even on Facebook, or else you can just always look on my Facebook, because we're always displaying stuff that Alfred says on his Facebook as well. So again, I want to thank you, Alfred, for joining me tonight.